Hi, and thank you for joining me today. One of the reasons that I decided to do this video is that over the years, numerous people have asked me how I became a communicator, what were my first experiences like. So I felt it would be good to actually try and explain and put out into a video so that people could understand a little bit more about it. Basically, many years ago, where it started was I had a horse, and 3 months after she had come to me, she had suffered surgical colic. She'd been misdiagnosed by the vet, got to hospital 14 hours late, and because of that she almost died. She was only given a 15% chance of recovery with her second surgery, but she came home, she made it home. And when she came home, I took on a little pony called Hope, who was around 24 years old, who had previously lived with a friend of mine. And my friend had rescued her from a fair where she had been bought by the meat man, was being led up the lorry, and my friend basically rushed over and bought her and found that she had a full bag of milk and that she was heavily in foal again. So basically I took on Hope when my mare came out of hospital, and had the dentist out to the two mares, and he noticed how scared Hope was, Hope being a little pony. And he commented that he had a friend that could speak to horses. He gave me her contact details, and she came out, and from there she came out to visit. And when she drove out my driveway, I thought, oh, but what happens when I've next got a question? What happens when I need to find something out for my animals again? And I decided from there that what I wanted to do was to learn to do it for myself. I read a couple of books, didn't really get anywhere. At the time there weren't any workshops about. Sorry, I've got a cat constantly licking my hand here. And there weren't any books. Sorry, there were books, but at the time there weren't any workshops about. And so it was a case of go and learn for myself, which is pretty much what I did, until one day I had what I can only describe as a sense of awareness that my horses could hear me. By then, this time we had the little foal as well, Hope's foal that we called Mika. So I stood with the horses. My daughter was about 9 at the time and was stood on the gate, and I just had this overwhelming sense that they were able to hear me. I hadn't heard anything at this time, but I just had this overpowering sense that they could hear me. So I found myself talking in my head to them, saying, okay, you know, I know you can hear me. And I said to Kaylee, I'm going to ask you to do something, and when I ask you, I would like you to do it, you know, just for confirmation for me. So I said to her, I'm going to take a step forward now. When I take a step forward, I'd like you to do the same. She did it. I thought, fluke, you know, just luck. So I did it again. She did it again. I did it a third time. This time she didn't respond. So when I asked her in my head, and I sent her the message, why didn't you do what I just asked you? Her reply was simple. She said, because I didn't want to. At which point I was laughing so much I was nearly bent over. Because, you know, and I said to her, fair play. I said, just because I asked to prove to me, why should you have to? So obviously communication, when we actually ask an animal to do something, isn't necessarily that clear all the time, in as much as the responses that they give to us if we ask them to do something, because obviously their conscious selves can override if they can't see a point for doing it, or if the connection's slightly weaker than it was for me that day. Then I think all animal communicators will say we can't necessarily get an animal to do something just because we ask them. It's a bit like say, for instance, asking your child to tidy the bedroom. You know, it's not going to happen every time, but it's just one of the things that will show you can happen. And for me that day, it was certainly an eye-opener, because the horses had actually stood, and this was one of the reasons that I knew something was going on and that they were able to hear me, was because they actually came up and stood in a semicircle around me, around the front of me, and my daughter had actually said to me, Mummy, what are you doing? And I said, oh, I'm talking to my horses. She said, oh, okay then, as if it was, you know, perfectly normal, because she obviously understood it in a slightly different way. And she got off the fence and went back to the house. So after having this communication with Kaylee and the interesting interactions with the three there. I went back into the house, and in there I had a white Persian called Arnold, and Arnold had recently become a house cat because he'd had a bad car accident only a few months before. He'd been left for dead in the road. He'd broken his jaw front and back and hemorrhaged behind his eye. He'd healed up. He'd healed up brilliantly, but he was quite known locally for sitting in the middle of the road, watching for the shrews and things in the side of the road and the mice. And so I decided it was going to be a house cat because it was just only a matter of time till he got hit again. And so I went back into the house, and I was sat on the bottom of the stairs, and I started speaking to Arnold in my head again, asking him how he was. Every single answer that he gave to any of the questions was, I want to go outside. And he sounded really, really miserable. I kept trying to change the question, but no, everything he said was, I want to go outside. And at that time, even though his behaviour hadn't necessarily shown it, I realised just how unhappy he was. So I opened the door, he ran out onto the patio. I'll never forget this. He ran out onto the patio, then he turned round, he ran back in, jumped on my lap, licked my face, ran back out again. He came back about 3 hours later, dragging a massive blackberry piece of bush behind him, just as was typical for him. So basically that's how my communication began. It was very sudden. It was a massive heightened awareness that I experienced within the first 3 days. I had no turn off switch. It didn't stop. It was the chickens on the chicken lorries as I was driving down the road. It was the cows in the fields at the side of the roads. It didn't stop. During that time, those 3 days as well, I went to a friend's yard and met her horse for the first time, and it was very interesting because I hadn't met him before. It really showed his personality by the way that he came across, and by the way that he was talking. And one of the things that I did, he was in his stable, and I went through and I said to him, and I said, oh, how do you feel about your stable? He said, oh, I need more bedding because, you know, if I haven't got enough bedding, I knock my knees when I get down to go to sleep sometimes on the rubber matting. So I explained about the bedding. I asked how he felt about his hay net. And it's from there it got a little bit comical because his reply was, doesn't she know horses are meant to eat off of the floor? So I explained to my friend that, you know, he says, you know, he's meant to eat off the floor. She says, oh, I know that, but if I do that, he spreads it all in his bedding. You know, it just makes a complete mess of it. But his answer, actually, you know, as comical as it sounds, you know, he has a very good point, because what he said then was, yes, but then it takes me longer to eat it, and if it takes me longer to eat it, it gives me something to do for all of the hours that I'm in my stable. So he actually had a really valid point, and that wasn't really something that I thought about because we're so worried about clean stables and things. So from then, you know, he was explaining all kinds of things about how he only liked red apples and he didn't like green ones. As it turned out, he'd eat red apples and he'd spit green ones out. And also there was an issue when riding with him pausing, not being majorly nappy, not being difficult, but he explained exactly what was going on there. So that was able to change for him, and he was able to be helped through that. It was a very, very interesting day for me. I spoke to several horses on the yard, and then from there I spent about 18 months. I spent about 18 months of my time speaking to horses and other animals, cats, dogs, anything that would listen to me, really. If they were unwell, I would check out and see what I could find before the vet or the chiropractor or whoever came out. But what I wanted to do was basically validate myself. You know, I wanted you know, I can't even say the word now. The validation that what I was hearing was correct. That, you know, that I was gaining, you know, a good enough accuracy that I felt that I could then go out and work for the public. And after about 18 months, and that's what I went and did, I started working with clients all over the world, and that's also when I began teaching my workshops. With my workshops, at the time they were being run, I had to work out how to teach animal communication because I didn't know, you know, it just happened to me, and it had been very full on at the time. And at the time, nobody else in the UK were teaching workshops as far as I was aware, except for a couple of American ladies that would now and again came over, because back then when I started teaching in 1999, there certainly wasn't the massive boom and animal communicators everywhere that there is now. Then from there I went on to also write the first recognised qualification in animal communication, as well as some others in related subjects that are run through Stonebridge College at the moment. I'm sorry as well, the light keeps coming through, the sun keeps passing through clouds. So yeah, basically that's how it started off for me, and I now work with animals all over the world, thousands and thousands of animals up to date. I work with all species of animals, although I do specialise in horses because I have a background knowledge in horses. I'm also a national magazine columnist, a book author, and what else? My CD as well. I also have a CD, which is an animal healing workshop CD, which is all about stomach Frida. Sorry, I'm just going to tap my arm then because I wasn't stroking her enough. Also as well, I have the CD, yes, the Animal Workshop CD, which has basically got various guided meditations and things like that on there for people that want to learn. So yeah, there's lots of things out there, and I also run workshops from my home and at various different venues for people to come and learn as well, besides the diploma courses. So hope you find the information useful, and if anybody wants to contact me or ask any questions, please feel free to, and I'll catch up with you again sometime. Thank you very much for listening. Bye.